the biggest ever thing that you need to get right is your demand before you make any pricing decision at all.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
I mean, it's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Jennings Executive Search. I had a great conversation with John Jennings about the skills needed in different pricing roles. He and I think a lot alike. If you're looking for a new pricing role, or if you're trying to hire just the right pricing person, I strongly suggest you reach out to Jennings Executive Search. They specialize in placing pricing people. Say that 3 times fast. Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the exciting relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving, and our guest today is Dinaz Zaq. Here are 3 things you want to know about Dinaz before we start. She is the director at Revenue Pricing Consultants in London. She spent 20 years in revenue management at British Airways, and I love pricing people from the airlines. I wish I'd had that job at one point in time. And she's also worked for resorts, hotels, and cruise lines. So we are talking about pricing travel. Oh, and she's also a country and blues fan who lives in London. Welcome, Dinaz.
Hello. Hi, Mark. Nice to meet you.
How did you get into pricing?
It was quite by accident, really. I joined British Airways, and then there was a job going in revenue management, which is the term airlines use for managing all their pricing and all their flying programs, every seat on the plane through all the different types of cabins. So British Airways gave me a really solid pricing background, I'd say. And then I tried a couple of other things like working at the airports, doing capacity management for all the airport staff in all the terminals at Heathrow. But it didn't quite grab me as much as revenue management. There's always a thrill to it where you can actually see the results of the work that you do. You can tell if you've made more money or if you've gone with empty seats, and you can have an impact on the industry and the business. So all my other jobs that I've done in cruise and hotels have always been pricing and revenue management.
So it seems to me, and tell me if this is wrong or not, but it seems to me that the airline industry and hotels and cruises are all very similar in that you've got these perishable goods. Once the plane flies, once the cruise ship goes, once the day's over, I've lost the room if it was empty.
Yes. Very much like groceries on the shelf.
Yeah, exactly. I got old bananas. Can't sell old bananas. Right? Well, and so let's talk about this because this sounds fascinating to me. First off, I think I understand how airlines price to some extent, but I would love for you to tell us all, how is it that airlines price?
Sure. So the biggest thing that struck me, and I talked to you as when I first started looking at airline revenue management, the biggest thing that I had a misconception about is that it's very much the price the customer is willing to pay. And there's nothing to do with fixed and variable costs. And, even in hotels and cruise and airlines, it's very much demand and supply-led pricing. So that's...
Wait. Pause. I think that's absolutely brilliant. First off, everybody out there who's doing cost plus pricing right now, I want you to listen closely to what she just said, right? Costs had absolutely nothing to do with the decisions they were making, which is pretty fascinating. But if you think about it, if a plane flies with one empty seat and someone would have paid me $1, I just made $1 more.
Sure. Exactly.
So that's pretty cool. Well, so actually, let me push back just a little bit, because it actually costs you something to serve that customer, doesn't it? Because you have to buy the soda or the pretzels, and there's probably a little bit more gas because the plane weighed a little bit more. Did you understand that? And was there a minimum price that we could go with?
Yeah. So airlines, so they vaguely have in the background what they call the marginal cost of carriage, which talks at or looks at, the fuel consumption, the aircraft's going anyway, the staff that you've paid already at check-in and all the rest of it. But when you're pricing every seat, because it's variable pricing and the demand is based on the timing of demand when people are purchasing the seat. So it's very much continuous and variable pricing for each seat that you sell onto the aircraft. And it's one of the weird reasons why airlines need really complex computers to work it all out behind the scenes. Because the demand side that you are looking at has a variety of influencers. It's not as simplistic as going from London to New York, for example. You could have connecting passengers going onwards from New York to Houston, or you could have someone coming from Amsterdam connecting through London and going to New York. So you've got all the people that are transiting. You've got the reason the person's traveling. So you've got, is he a leisure customer? Is it a businessman? Are they purchasing well in advance, which means their price elasticity is different compared to someone who's on a business journey and has only 2 days to make his booking, and his price elasticity is very different. So there's those complexities. Then the other one for airlines is currency. You sell in different currencies and the FX changes. Then they have fuel, which is their biggest cost. And some airlines hedge and others don't. So everything that you look at, the demand and the cost, has a lot of complex variables within it. They also have cabins or different type of cabins. Most traditional airlines, not the low-cost operators, but traditional airlines might have 4 types of cabins. And then if you can't fill one cabin, you overbook against that and upgrade a few people. You overbook the flight as a whole so that you don't have that one empty seat. So there's lots and lots of things. Then there is the time of the flight, the time of day. How many competitors operate on the route? Do they chop and change their capacity so the supply is a constant change? So all these things requires a really sophisticated computer program. And then there's my favorite question where everybody says, oh, you have all these whiz-bang computers. Why do you need people? So that the answer to that really is the computer doesn't know that Easter's moved or that American are laying on another aircraft or someone's just canceled a flight, or that there's an oil conference somewhere and it's a special event. So all these other things give it that human element, and why the revenue manager at the airline is overseeing the sophisticated system rather than, and some basic airlines might be doing this, very, very old-fashioned Excel spreadsheet-based demand, where they will have, okay, I filled 10 seats, my price goes up by another $20 and so on and so on. And now,
so Dinaz, let me pause you for just a second, because you just brought up the technique that I thought airlines use, and it kind of simplifies everything that you just mentioned. And so that technique would be, I know how fast my airplane is supposed to fill up.
Right.
And if it's filling up slower than it's supposed to, I lower the price. And if it's filling up faster than it's supposed to, I raise the price.
Correct.
Okay. So is that the strategy, or is that not a strategy that you guys use?
Yes. Some airlines do that and others don't. So some airlines have complicated rules where you might say, I want people to book early, so they're training the customer. So their cheapest price, particularly the low cost, is always further out. And as you get closer to departure, the price goes up. So some airlines may not, or if you've got your demand forecast wrong, that's when that situation arises, where you've sold, maybe held on for the higher price, and then you're at 2 or 3 days out and there's no hope in hell you're going to fill those seats. So the question becomes one of strategy. Do you open up at a lower price and try to fill them, or do you go with a few empty seats and let go? And some of the analysis by the likes of people at MIT would probably be saying that there is a threshold where if you lower the price at the end, you lose money that way because you're educating the customer in a different way. So those things depend really on the strategy that the airline follows and what's the flavor of the day as far as their management is concerned.
Nice. So one of my favorite things to do is look at company strategies. And by the way, we can never tell what airline strategies are because it's just so complicated. Yeah. But I love looking at company strategies and trying to figure out why they do this. Mm-hmm. Now, anecdotally, I'm going to tell you something that I think is true, at least for American Airlines, which is the airline I fly most of the time. I will get the best price on a domestic flight if I book it 6 weeks before my flight. So if it's 8 or 10 or 12 weeks, it's more expensive. If it's 4 weeks, it's more expensive. So now, is that a true statement? And B, what's the strategy?
So it could be that they're doing something where they're relying on their demand curves, or the computer is taking care of it, and the human intervention happens at that point in time that you've noticed that you might get a better deal. And when the system's taking care of it, and it might not have sold as much as the revenue manager thinks it should have, at which point in time they can open it up. Because these systems are so intense in the number of flights and seats that they have to optimize, and just stop me if I'm going into too much detail, but it sometimes is a case of the system won't look at it until a certain point in time because it has certain checkpoints. It'll look at 6 months out and 40 days out and 30, and then as you go closer, it'll look at it more often because it can't optimize all the flights every minute of the day. So there could be various reasons for that.
I find this so fascinating. Now, let's talk about hotels.
Uh-huh.
How are hotels different than pricing airplane seats?
Right. They are very different. The basics in all of this is always the same. There's you are there to maximize the revenue. But the difference with hotels is that their capacity location is fixed. They can't just, break the hotel and build it up somewhere else. So what they're looking at really is surrounding hotels within a 5 to 10 mile radius if they're in a busy city area, or in a different area than maybe even 20-mile radius. And then they benchmark themselves against similar class or star of hotels. And they actually pay a company called STR that gives them a blinded metric on how they are performing against their competitor group. And all the hotels subscribe to this. And then they determine who their competitors are in the radius. And then they look at themselves and think, oh, I'm doing better than the competition. My rate's better, but my volume's not, and my revenue's not. So should I go for more volume in this instance? Or, they do competitor monitoring to that degree. But it's a lot simpler than doing it with airlines, because what I discussed before, where airlines, the passengers come from all over the place. So that's one of hotels. The other thing with hotels is that their rate of booking isn't as quick as airlines. And that's a major factor. So airlines bookings come at speed very quickly and they've got multiple flights and lots to look at. But the scary thing when I moved into hotels, and particularly city hotels, was when you mentioned timing of demand. City hotels tend to book very, very close in. So within the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks to arrival date is when their booking curve is the steepest. And so what that means is if you've got something wrong, you haven't got much chance to rectify. You have to be on it every day, close in. But further out, you may not want to look at it that often. And
the other thing that seems unusual to me, though, is airlines hold their prices really high for the last minute traveler, and hotels don't. So why the difference?
Hotels also have a degree of flexibility in their bookings nowadays, which airlines do through certain ticketing regulations. But hotels, I don't know if people look at hotel pricing or sit and watch it once they've booked as much as they do airlines. So if you've booked your hotel, 20 days before or whatever, you don't watch the price. And the hotels so the chains are run differently, and then each individual hotel can be a franchise. So each operator will want to do different things with his own hotel to maximize revenue. So the consistency in the strategy, even for a Marriott or an Intercontinental hotel, might be quite different, because some of them are owned by an ownership, private equity or whoever, and they just franchise the brand. So you might get some hotels that go and drop their price. Some might even take walk-ins at the door for a cheaper price. They don't want to publish it on the internet. Airlines might, it's about, when we talk strategy, when you try to hold the price and drop it later, you can sell it through a different distribution channel so that it doesn't hit the public and therefore not destroy your pricing strategy.
So like Hotwire or Priceline or one of those places.
Right, or Kayak. Okay.
So you just gave me, you just gave all of us a big hint, and I want you to teach me how to do this. I need to go stay at a Marriott tonight, or I need to go stay in a hotel tonight. I can walk into the Marriott and say, look, you normally charge $240 a night for this room, but I've only got $120. Will you take it?
Yeah, some hotels you can get away with it, depending on how much autonomy the guys at reception have. Yes.
Nice. And so how much of a discount should I expect?
I'd say if it's on the day, if the regular fare is $300, they might sell it for $200.
Oh, okay. So 35%. That's not bad.
Yeah.
That's not bad. All right. Okay. This is fascinating. I'm loving this conversation, but I got to do one more. And I never go on cruises, but I have to understand, how is pricing cruises different than hotels or airlines?
Wow. Yes. So cruise, the mentality is very different. And I've worked for Royal Caribbean, so I talk more for them, but obviously all the other competitors that we used to look at too. Their stuff is, they make about 25 or 30%, and this is no secret, from their onboard sales, because you've got a captive audience. So their strategy is to fill it to 100%. And that's why you might find cruise prices dropping nearer the time quite a bit. But what the customer loses out on is you may not get your best cabin if you wait too long, because the people that are regular cruisers, they'll have got all the balconies, and then you'll be stuck somewhere on top of the discotheque or in a noisy area or whatever. But cruise prices differently, mainly for that reason, because they go to 100%. And the complexities with the cruises, it's the type of ship. There's two big things about their demand. It's either the type of ship or it's the itinerary. And what they find is that people that are first-time cruisers research the type of ship a lot more. So they really want to go on a nice ship. But people that have cruised long and done a few, they will want to go to the Nordics or, Alaska and do more exotic things. They won't go to the mainstream Caribbean and back type cruising. So they have to price for first-time cruisers and also people that have cruised. And what they try to do to get around to hold their base price, they'll hold the base price high, and then to discount, they'll throw in promotions. So you might get a free drinks package, or you might get, 2 nights in a casino, or a discount for booking your next cruise. So for cruises, it's very difficult for a revenue management system to really get to the bottom of how many discounts were given off the base price through the promotion. And that is the big complexity with cruise. Just one more big thing in all of these is distribution. Airline distribution is very good. Mainly they distribute themselves through their own websites because they're much better. Cruises rely a lot on travel agencies. So the cost or the price is impacted by the travel agent commission. And one of the big reasons for that is the cruise is so complex that the customers want a little bit of talking it through, before the purchase decision gets made. You mull over it quite a lot before you say, I'm going on Allure of the Seas from Miami, sailing to, whatever. So those are the big things about and so the cost of sale in pricing for cruise is a lot more because they rely on the mom and pops and the big travel agents to distribute their product. Hotels are a mixture, but hotels they get held to ransom by booking.com and hotel.com and all of those as well. But they need them because for a consumer, I can't go and look at each individual hotel's website to figure out who has the best price. So these OTPs or online travel agents do a good job for hotels, really.
Nice. This has been fabulous. Dinaz, I wish I could just ask you 100 more questions, but we're going to have to wrap this up, and I have 2 things left to do with you.
Okay, go on.
So first, we're going to play pricing table topics.
Okay.
And so I explained to Dinaz what pricing table topics was before we started. I shuffled my cards and picked one out for her. And so you get the 7 of diamonds. You get to talk about this for 1 to 2 minutes. I'll hold up my finger when you hit 1 minute. Okay.
Sure.
You can just tell she feels pressure. I could see it. Okay. So here we go, Dinaz. Every employee creates or destroys value.
True, absolutely true. So when you talk about value pricing, the airline has given the customer value by its schedule and by the service they provide on board and by the flatbed and all the rest. And then if you get one stroppy employee at the check-in desk who's either rude or not interested, it just creates a bad impression. Even cabin crew, there's a lot of anecdotal stories from within my friend circle, if you like, about the things cabin crew do and say. And some airlines are known for their cabin crew being like military drills when they do their safety checks and, just a bit over the top. And others have a more relaxed approach. So, yeah, the experience is every employee definitely creates, especially the front of house employees create a very different experience. Okay, I see the finger go up.
Oh, she's like, I made it. All right. Nice job. Nice job. No, and I think that's absolutely true. And what I love about that quote and about what you just said is that if we have a back of house person or a cleaning person offend a customer, it is harder for us to win that customer. I mean, how low do we have to go in price to get that customer back? So it absolutely affects our pricing every time. So very nice. Very nice. Dinaz, we are going to wrap it up now, but last question for you. What's one piece of pricing advice you would give our listeners that you think could have a big impact on their business?
So the biggest ever thing that you need to get right is your demand before you make any pricing decision at all. And if you get demand wrong, your whole model breaks.
Nice. And so I would normally say something slightly different, but I think it's probably very similar. And I probably would have said the number one thing you have to know is how your customers perceive the value of your products.
Absolutely.
And you translate that into, well, are they going to buy from me or not at these price points? Right? Yes. So nice. Dinaz, thank you so much for your time today. If anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
I'm on LinkedIn, so feel free. I usually accept most invites.
Okay. And it is
on LinkedIn, and then they can drop me an email and then we can connect up.
perfect. It is the only name I've ever seen with two Z's, so she's probably easy to find.
There's a first. There's not too many of them. Wherever I go, they always remember.
Yes. Episode 190 is all done. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, would you please leave us a rating and a review? And by the way, if you could get one more person to listen, that would double our listeners. Well, not one more person would double it, but if everybody got one more, that would double it. And if you really like the podcast, would you please go to ratethispodcast.com/impact pricing. It will show you how to rate the podcast on whatever channel you listen to it. And finally, if you have any questions or comments about the podcast or pricing, feel free to email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact. Thanks again to Jennings Executive Search for sponsoring our podcast. If you're looking to hire someone in pricing, I suggest you contact someone who knows pricing people. Contact Jennings Executive Search.